Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to Just One Word with Jan. It's a great afternoon and looking forward to it. We've just had a great weekend. We had church on Sunday. I'm sure you all had church on Sunday too. We had a great service on Sunday morning. And it's just great, isn't it, when you come together and you meet all the people that you maybe don't see all week, but it's so good to come together. And we also had ground level leaders meeting, a lunch on Tuesday, which was also good. Our senior pastor Stuart Bell was speaking, which again was really a blessing. So it's been quite a full-on week, and we've got a lot of things still to come this month. We've got Worship Encounter at the end of the month, so looking forward to that, and we'll keep you posted on that. But today I'm really excited because although I've had lots of different people from the church, I've got our location pastor, and I'm sure we'll explain who his location pastor is, but our location pastor, my pastor, on me. So, and I know I keep kind of saying that because I know it's a bit odd, isn't it? We've got so many pastors, but Howard is the location pastor for Alive Lincoln Central, which is the branch of the church that I attend, which is kind of the main, I guess the hub in the middle of the churches, and Howard oversees that. So I'm not going to wait any longer. I'm going to bring him on and we can get chatting. So welcome, Howard Williams.
Hi, Jan. It's great.
Hey, Howard.
Great to be with you.
It's great to have you on here. It's great to finally get you on here. I know it's hard to get you, kind of, let me put you that way around. That's better. You can be under your name. Put your name under you. It's hard to nail you down sometimes because you're a busy man, but I'm so glad we managed to get a date in the diary.
It's a privilege.
Yeah. And so I've known you like 10 years since I moved to Lincoln, but you weren't the location pastor at the time. And you were actually the worship pastor, I believe.
Yeah, that's correct. Claire and I, Claire's my wife. We've been married 26 years, and we came to Lincoln in 1993. So we've been there 30 years now, and we both came to study teacher training. We came to Lincoln, to university there, to become primary school teachers here in the UK. That's the youngest age group, 4s to 11s. And yes, we both trained in that. I grew up in the church, really, in an Anglican church, and music had been a kind of real strong part of my church growth. And really, for the years that I'd kind of lived prior to coming to Lincoln, I'd been in bands and played worship music, etc. So when I came to Lincoln, I found myself at this church called New Life, as it was at the time. And a gentleman was leading worship from the platform, a gentleman called Chris Bowater. And I'd grown up listening to Chris's albums days before social media. So I didn't even know what Chris looked like. But here I am in the balcony at the time on that very first Sunday I was there, being led by Chris. And I recognized his voice. Then later that week, literally a few days later, I'm in one member of the worship team's house, and Chris has invited me to join the worship team. And since that point, my journey in the life of our local church has grown and developed. And I've done that thing of just continually saying yes to the opportunities that God brings. And so that led me in the early 2000s to begin to lead the team of worshippers, worship musicians and singers, and become worship pastor, and then worship and creative arts and all of those kind of things as well. Until in the later 2000s, 2014, I then became the executive pastor of the church. So really the kind of oversight of the operations and the running of a multi-site church as we are now. And then in the period of COVID, had a conversation with our senior pastor, Stuart Bell, around how I just heard from God that my future and Claire and I's future really was not in my glib term was not in pastoring spreadsheets, but it was in pastoring people. And what does that look like in our context, etc. So here we are today, Claire and I now pastor one of our locations of Alive. And as you say, Jan, we're a multi-site church. We've got 6 locations across the region of Lincolnshire, and we're pastoring in the centre of the city of Lincoln, and we have the joy and honour of being in a body of just wonderful followers of Christ, and we just love being with those people.
Yeah, and we're blessed, aren't we, the way that God is kind of moving it, that we're going into, I mean, we've always had a smattering of different nations, and there's always been a smattering, but it's really grown now, hasn't it? I mean, they're not just multi-site, it's multinational, it's multi-generational, and it is really a blessing to see. So it must be a challenge to kind of have all those different moving parts and take care of them.
Yes, it's a rich tapestry, I think, the church, and I love the way that Paul talks in the New Testament about the church, and the church being a church of all nations, and that picture in Revelation 7 of all the nations gathered around the throne. I love that image, and we are a city centre church, and I suppose many cities across the UK are experiencing similar things now, and we're a church where over 40 nations are now gathered for worship, and a majority of those now from Nigeria and other African nations, but really nations from across the world. And we're hosting even next week an evening for Eastern Europeans. So God's doing something wonderful. It's a rich tapestry of nations as we gather together, and for Lincoln, that's kind of quite a new thing. And I think the church in many ways is really at the forefront of what God is doing in our city. And to see a body of believers that are growing in their diversity, but also the inclusivity that only comes through Christ, is a joy. It's a joy to see. Yeah,
I think we're blessed because we do have inclusivity in so many ways, and we've worked at it. I know you've kind of worked at that, as saying we are one body, and so I believe that we're seeing the fruit of that. A question: when you were worship pastor, you were amazing. I mean, I loved you as worship pastor, and not to take anything away from Dave, because Dave is great. Dave Bell,
Amen.
Awesome worship pastor. He's grown into it. When he first started, it was like, he's a great singer, but, not sure I'm doing this, but I watched him grow into that role. And but you were amazing. And I often wondered whether after you stepped down from that to take on the exec pastor role, do you sometimes look and think, I wish I was up there, because you're so gifted in that area?
Yeah, well, we'll get onto some of this, I think, in a few minutes' time. I think the transition of any role carries both the joy of the new and the pain of the old. And that's, I think it's the mark of walking with Christ, is that God doesn't ask us to stand still. There are moments of time where we have to move and we have to allow things to grow. And when we hold on to things, all those things become part of our identity. And so often ministry can do that, can't it? It become this kind of sense that actually ministry becomes attached to who we are. The moving forward carries with it a degree of pain as well as wonderful joy. I mean, it is a huge joy of my heart to see what God is now doing in worship ministry in our local church. And that can only have happened by kind of uncorking the bottle and allowing others to come through. And hindsight's a wonderful privilege in a way, isn't it? When you look back and you thank God for what happened through that. And I'm so grateful to God for his gentle walk with us as we walk through those moments of transition or those moments of change. Anything new carries with it, that kind of resurrection story, or the full Easter story of there is death, there is kind of Easter Saturday and waiting, and then there is Resurrection Sunday of the new thing. And I think in many of our lives, that imagery or that imagery from Scripture becomes very important to understand at any moment of transition.
Oh, that's so true. That's so true. Yeah, I think watching you and Claire grow, actually, and in fact, I mean, a period of your life that you're going to share a bit in a minute. I watched Claire grow.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a tremendous time for her, because you know you've always been kind of out there at the front, and she's always been a little bit behind you. But she's a very gifted lady, and she stepped up and really, you know, came into her own. So that was really great to see. And so you're a family man. You've got 3 boys or 4 boys? 3 boys.
3, yeah.
3 boys, yeah. No. Gosh, I remember when the youngest was born, and I think we hadn't been here. But how old is he now?
So yeah, Elijah's 9 now. So yes, that'll be about the right
I know
time.
we hadn't been here very long when he was born, and you know, and now he's like this, little walking around. You know, he used to be toddling about, and it's just such a joy to see the generations in our church. I mean,
Really
you know,
is.
your mum and dad are still a part of the church, although they go to a different location.
Yeah.
Which is cool. So it's great to see 3 generations, and we see that in the Bell family, of course. We see it in the Blundells. Their parents are around as well, and lots of families. Oh, even Joe and Dan. I mean, they're both, their mums were at the ladies' meeting.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to remember. We had the ladies' meeting. I knew there was something I was supposed to talk about at the ladies' meeting, and you know, I'm really not a ladies' meeting person.
I heard that in one of your other interviews. I love that.
I'm not. And you know, Joe talked me into going, really. And to be honest, I went because she was speaking.
Yeah.
And I did have a great time. I really enjoyed it. But you know, I've never been a woman's minister, really, because I've always felt that the truth sets the whole body free.
Yeah.
And there's place for it. There's place for it. But I do prefer to minister to a mixed congregation. But we had a great time. And I got a great sweatshirt, which I really love. It's got Colossians on the front, rooted. It's Colossians 2 on the front, which I really liked. But sorry about that. I had to kind of mention that. I should have done that at the beginning. I knew there was something, you know, sometimes, you know, I'm sure we've had a good week this week. It's been busy. That's what it was. It was a ladies' meeting. And I know you guys have a meeting coming up as well, that Dan was there promoting.
That's right.
So, I'll have to get Dan on here one day. He's, you know, as I said to Joe when she was on, he's like a chihuahua speed, isn't he?
Oh, you'll have fun. You'll have fun with Dan.
Yeah, I love him. He's great. I mean, we have such a great a diversity of not just people, but of ministers. And I love that. Yeah. I love the fact that we've got a great team of people, young and old, and that, you know, God uses all of them in different ways. And I absolutely love that. So I'm going to play one of Dave's music videos now.
Brilliant.
And because I just love them, and I play them every week. I play one of Dave's nearly every week. And this is his latest one, Let It Rain. So we'll play that. And then when we come back, then we'll talk more about the challenges that you went through and how God took you through it and the lessons you learned from it.
Yeah.
With praise and thanksgiving in your heart, enter his courts with praise and thanksgiving in your heart, and bless his name.
I love that. And Dave told me yesterday he's got 3 or 4 more songs that are going to be released soon.
Brilliant.
So that's great. And of course, if people watch Dave's videos, they'll see you in some of them.
Yeah, they will do. Yeah, going back a few years now. But yes.
Playing the keys. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they didn't drag me out to get wet on that in that video.
My brother put one of the guitars together for them because, of course, you can't have an electric guitar out in the rain. So he just took all the body out because, you know, he repairs guitars and stuff.
Amazing.
And so he put the guitar together. He's watching, actually. So,
Brilliant. Brilliant.
So you did a great job, Pete, doing that guitar. And so, yeah. So, Howard, you went from exec pastor to being location pastor straight after COVID and all the challenges that had. And I noticed, and lots of people noticed, that you were never stopping. You were like a dynamo. You're like the little Duracell bunny. You got going and never stopped. And people around you were concerned, and yet you still, like many pastors, kept going until you couldn't keep going anymore. So tell us about that. Tell us what led up to it. I mean, I really feel like this could bless pastors who are on that same track, feeling the same way, but haven't yet gone through what you went through. So I'm going to disappear and leave it to you. Okay, so share with us.
Right. Brilliant. Thank you, Jan. Yeah, and I do hope and pray that this is a blessing to others. So early January 2023, so 11 months ago now, I faced what would be known now as burnout or breakdown. And language is really important. And I think the word burnout is the appropriate word. We have to be careful with that phrase because it's used in a variety of scenarios and variety of places. But what I mean by that is that actually holistically, both mind, spirit, soul, body, for me really began to shut down. And it became most noticeable in my mind. That was where I first became alarmed by it. I got to the point very early in January where I couldn't put sentences together. I couldn't form sentences and I couldn't convey ideas. It was like my mind was a carousel, like the fairground ride, and was spinning out of control, and anything new trying to get in would just get spurted out. And I came back off a Christmas break, 5-day break between Christmas and New Year. And I think historically, those moments of time, break moments like that, would have done something to recharge me. And I was really alarmed at the very first time I was back in ministry and work at how unrefreshed I was and how drained I was. I stood in a staff meeting the very first day back in January and cried and had no idea why, didn't know what was going on. So over the process of a couple of weeks, was able to process how ill I was and how ill I was getting, walk that out with our senior pastors and members of our staff team, to the point where it was agreed that I would take some time off for burnout. And initially we thought that could be a week or a couple of weeks of rest and recuperation, and it turned out to be about 6 months of deep rest in God and deep rest in many ways in my life. So you asked the question, Jan, which is a brilliant question. How did I get there? And Jesus talks in the Gospels, and he uses a brilliant phrase, which is, you may gain the whole world but lose your soul. And I think at the core of this burnout, I was so busy for God in so many ways, but at the very essence of who I am, I'd lost my soul. I'd lost that connection with him. I had burnt out from a doing mentality, and I would no longer receive in order to give. I was just giving. And in so many ways, and really January was the culmination, I think, of a couple of years of, as you say, just relentlessly going. I'd learned a pattern. I'd learned some behaviors that were very unhealthy for me. And those behaviors resulted in ultimately my body going into shock, my body saying it cannot do this anymore. And my whole being, so from my mind through to my very soul and spirit, was just dull. I had nothing. I was flatlining, really, and had been flatlining really for a couple of years. I think I could minister, I could put the right show on, I could do the right things. It looked okay on the surface, etc. But at the very core of who I was flatlining, and it took a moment in my life to stop me. And it was really, I hit a wall. And I use that phrase, I hit a wall, for the kind of depth of spiritual understanding of what a wall is. And since that point, over the last 9, 10, 11 months now, really begun to learn about how God meets us at the wall. And wall doesn't just mean a physical burnout for me. It can be anything in our lives. But often there's a moment in our lives, or multiple moments, where God reveals himself in a set of circumstances that you would have never wished would have happened. And that's what happened to me. So the challenge of burnout for me was both trying to define what had happened and then begin to understand why. And I liken that really to an iceberg. For me, the burnout, or the behavior of burnout, is the tip of the iceberg. And I wanted to go deeper. I wanted to know why. I wanted to peel back or chip back the layers beneath the surface and begin to understand what drove me, what positioned me in that place. And there were multiple factors that God revealed over the course of many months, and is still revealing. And I think, he has brought me through, but there's still much that he's doing in the midst of the healing journey of all of this. So it's interesting. The more that I delve into why, I find some of the things that really related to me. So the World Health Organization define burnout as this. They define it as a hazardous occupational phenomenon that can be identified through 3 classic burnout characteristics. And these 3 were so relevant to me. The first was an emotional exhaustion. So when I talk about kind of flatlining, that's really what it was. It was an emotional couple of years of exhaustion. The second one was depersonalization. And what they say is that feeling detached or disconnected from your physical body, yourself, thoughts, as if you were an outsider observing in. And I look back on that, and there's so much truth in that for me. I was detached, depersonalized from anything that was happening in and around me. So it wasn't that I just didn't feel anything about anything, really. I had no feelings at all. And the first was the third is reduced personal satisfaction. And that would be really true. I didn't enjoy anything. There was no joy really in my life at that moment of time. I was just functioning, doing ministry. And I was a doer. I was very, very known really as somebody who could get things done. And in certain parts of my life, that was celebrated as well. So I took some time to slow down. In fact, I couldn't do anything else. God slowed me down. It was like a full stop moment of time. And over the first month or so, went to the depths, really, very, very dark, very complicated in my thought processes. I think the only thing that I could say that I didn't experience, I wasn't suicidal. And that's perhaps the only experience that I didn't have in that moment of time. But in terms of the depths of depression and trying to understand why this was happening was so confusing and very debilitating. And trying to understand what had happened really took quite a while for me to take that process. I think the only piece that I could hold on to through all of that was a degree of faith. I didn't have a faith challenge in it, in the midst of it all. I still passionately believed in Jesus. I believed in the work of the cross. I believed fully in the Father being with me, but I felt isolated, alone, and lost, deeply lost in the middle of it. And I think that's probably because one of the layers of the iceberg was really significantly around identity, doing for God in order that I would be acknowledged for something and my identity would be approved, but not approved by the Father, but approved by others. So one of the areas that, as I went below the surface, I really had to understand was the need in my life that I'd built for the approval of people. And church is a brilliant body, but it's also a place where some of these things run rife. And if ministers have any degree in their heart of needing affirmation from people, the platform is an incredible place for that. So the desire for affirmation gets fulfilled when applause comes, or people thank you for ministry, or they thank you for doing. And if the crack in your life is that you need that from people, that ultimately will only ever get fed by a platform. And that ultimately spirals out of control. So what happens then is you enter a platform mentality where you're looking to the congregation to affirm you, and you're needing that. And that was so rife in me. It had become an idol in my life. It was something that was in so many ways a driving force from me, this people pleasing, this need for affirmation. So through the healing process, beginning to understand again that my affirmation is fully found in the Father. My identity is fully found in him. But a lot needed to be unpacked in order for me to then receive that as well. So, yeah, come back, Jan. Ask me.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, I was going to ask you a question. Was there an element of guilt for succumbing to that kind of pressure? I know that some people feel that if they kind of collapse under the weight of it all, somehow they are lacking, and there's a guilt. I'm a minister, I'm a man of faith. Should this happen to me? Why is this happening? Why can't I stand up and do it? Was there an element of that?
Yeah, absolutely. The first thing I said to my senior pastor as we process this is, I'm really scared of stopping. I don't want to stop. And I'm scared, I think, because of the responsibility. I'm scared of what people will think of that. I'm scared, as you say, Jan, of that man of faith that in some way looks as though it's failing. You know, I think we hold up sometimes the faith picture that says it's got to be strong. You know, what does strong look like? And in our culture, strong looks like victory and having victory over, and all of that I agree with. I understand theologically victory, etc. But to display weakness or to display a place of vulnerability for me was not it was not a set of attributes I knew what that looked like. I knew what it was to be strong, to keep going, to be there for others, to be a support, to be a pastor to those who are also walking through things, but to then have to face something yourself that actually you just know, I can't be strong in this. In fact, me trying to be strong is part of the problem here. I need to allow myself to receive Jesus in this moment of time. And that was a biggie for me, to know that actually I need to receive. I need healing. I need to be with family. I need to be in a place that's quiet for me. There was a lot in there that actually the defense mechanisms had to come down. The wall had to come down. And it was only in the place where I started to get really real with myself and really real with God. Not just playing this, I'll be fine, God, you know, allow me to sleep a couple of days and I'll be back, or we'll be going again. But it was in that place where God deconstructed me, dismantled some of that, the falseness of what I'd believed, and allowed him to put things back in a kind of slow and gentle way again.
Yeah, I think one of the sad things in the church is that we don't want people to show vulnerability. We don't want ministers to be vulnerable. We want them to be supermen. And we've kind of built that. And yet there's such power in somebody who is real. And I do think that to be able to show vulnerability and say, this is where you've come through, you stay there, you came through. And that's the power, is to say, yes, I couldn't do this on my own. I was trying to do it by myself. Yes, love the Lord. Yes, accept the anointing. Absolutely. But go, go, go. Just for not the wrong things, but the wrong reasons for it. And then to be able to say, stop, let God do his stuff. And now I can come back strong. So, yeah, we'll talk some more about that. I'm going to just play a little commercial. I don't often get a chance to play these. I get carried away, but I'm going to play a little.
Looking to deepen your understanding of the Bible, imagine a place where you can dive into the depths of the greatest book ever written, guided by experienced scholars. Picture yourself gaining valuable insights, exploring different interpretations of biblical teachings, and connecting with a community of individuals who share your thirst for knowledge. Welcome to Real Life Bible College, a sanctuary for spiritual seekers, where you can broaden your horizons and strengthen your faith. Our free course is a comprehensive journey through the Bible, from the profound narratives of the Old Testament to the transformative teachings of the New Testament. Consider what it feels like, immersing yourself in ancient wisdom, discovering the historical, cultural, and spiritual contexts that shape the Bible's passages. Imagine the thrill of uncovering new perspectives, challenging your preconceptions, and expanding your understanding of your faith. Real Life Bible College offers you the chance to deepen your connection with the sacred texts, to bring them to life in a way you've never experienced before. You'll find yourself engaged in stimulating discussions, learning from thought-provoking lectures, and participating in insightful group studies. But it's more than just a course. It's a journey of self-discovery, a pathway to spiritual growth. It's an opportunity to explore your beliefs, to ask the big questions, and to seek answers within the hallowed pages of the Bible. Remember, knowledge is the foundation of faith. The more you understand, the stronger your faith becomes. Don't miss out on this opportunity to expand your knowledge and grow in your spirituality. Enrich your spiritual journey. Enroll now in our free course at Real Life Bible College. Visit our website at www.reallifebiblecollege.com. This is your chance to delve deeper, to seek, to learn, and to grow. Remember, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So take that step today. Your journey awaits.
Yeah, so every now and again I have to play a little commercial.
Love that. That's great.
So, yeah, it sounds amazing, doesn't it?
It does.
Did you notice the voice kind of sounds a little bit like Denzel Washington?
It was a good voiceover voice, wasn't it?
It is a very good voiceover voice, yeah. That's the power of AI, actually. Yeah, you can tell them what voice to do it in, which is quite fun.
Incredible.
So yeah, right. So you were really overworking, doing too much. I mean, and you were doing a lot more than your role required. It wasn't just, overworking in your area, was it? It was doing everything, overseeing everything. Are you a little bit of a control freak, or were you?
That's a great question. I think there is a degree, and as go below the surface, I think there's a degree of perfectionism in me that needs to be submitted to Christ. And I think the word control has become was very important for me. Becoming a control freak, having control over others, I think is less important was less important regarding controlling others in terms of behaviors or actions, etc. But being in control of things, I did hold as a very high value system internally, I think. And lots of things fed into that as well, which for me, when things started to get out of control, then become challenges to that value system. One thing I learned as this part of the process is that for those of us who are involved in pastoral ministry, caregivers in many ways, there's kind of three areas that we need in our lives to allow us to understand that what we're doing is of worth. And the first is value. We need to believe that what we do is valuable. The second is responsibility. We need to carry the right level of responsibility. And the third is reward. We need in some way to understand the reward of that role. And I think COVID had a lot to play in how pastors felt about the role that they were doing. You see, over time, the question about the value of it really got questioned in many, many ways. You know, the things that we held as our value system, being able to gather people, being able to lead a church, that you know the people are with you and are there. When people are scattered, that brought a whole set of challenges to people's value system. Then the responsibility, knowing that what we're doing carries a degree of responsibility. I think post-COVID, all of that kind of, will people come back? Won't they come back? You know, what will people think? Will they want to be in the room? And all those sort of things. Responsibility shifted in many ways. And that was a challenge. And then the third was reward. And COVID was a really interesting period of time. We've got in a wonderful, wonderful church alive. And so many people were so grateful for the work the church was able to do through that. But also through that period of time, you know, there was so many disagreements, not necessarily in our church, but I think nationally and internationally, in terms of what to do next. And therefore the rewards kind of diminished. And I think through it all, as pastors, there's been a really low ebb of the worth of what we've been doing. And we've had to kind of understand that our value system and our responsibility and our reward system comes from the Father, not through the work that we do. And for me, that was a biggie, really. So control was a big part of what I did, and learning to give away control, learning to give that to others. And as you said, Claire flourished in this season because in many ways she was given responsibility that before that I was holding from her in many ways. And I did that in other departments as well, holding back responsibility from others who could step up into those areas. So learning to live differently post this this moment in my life is the new challenge for me.
Yeah, and not falling back into, because when you're a bit of a perfectionist, because I'm a bit like that myself, it's very easy to say, oh, I'll do it, I'll take care of it. Yeah, because I know I can do it in 5 minutes. What you're taking 15 to make a hash of, I can do it in 5 minutes. And it's really hard, isn't it, to step back and go, no, that's their responsibility. They're doing it. And you know, the temptation is to try and get back into, to fall back in, just, well, I'll just do this. I'll just get involved here. But, you know, and yeah, it is hard. And so many pastors are struggling with that, having to yield responsibility to, you know, my husband is a prime example. He had a video ministry for years, and we used to have 3 cameras and a mixing desk, and we'd have it set up in the church. He'd be in the church, and I find him running around like a one-armed paper hanger, a bit like you were. And I say, where's so-and-so? Because I raised some volunteers for him. Oh, by the time I've told them what to do, I can do it myself. And I said, that's not the point. You take the time to teach them to do it so that you don't have to do it. And he finds that so hard. He still finds it hard. And I had to learn that the hard way. And I think you've had to learn it the hard way too, haven't you?
Hugely. Yeah, absolutely. And it's, you know, I think pastors, we teach this stuff all the time. We talk about it all the time. We're experts in the understanding of what needs to happen, but the actual implementation of it is more complex and more difficult often, isn't it? And I think there's value system stuff that's based in that. What do we get our values from, etc. I knew for me as well that some of what my challenges were how I was also relating to authority. So a lot of what I was doing was in order that I would make sure that things went well. So just this whole kind of sense of actually, if I'm in some way in control of it, I know that it's going to go well. I didn't want others to feel like they were going to fail or fall over and those sort of things. But it's ultimately, all of that's false. All of it is a bit of a fallacy, really, because unless we allow people to make the mistakes, unless we allow people to grow, and unless we allow people to develop and create culture for that, we ultimately are corks in a bottle. So things are slowly dying behind us. They're not growing. There's no life ultimately in it of long-term sustainability. And we're here. I love our legacy ministry. We're all here to leave a legacy. We're here for the next generation. And I think I've had to deeply learn that. And it's a continual journey for me to continue to learn that. And there are moments, of course, I think you brilliantly said it, Jan, where sometimes, it's not going to be quite as good as you think you're doing it. But I think we as pastors have to change our value set to a more long-term thinking and actually change what we're holding as the metric for good. Because the metric for good may not be a perfect service at that moment of time, but maybe the metric for good is the development of the number of people and the skills that they're bringing. And I think if I can change the metric of what I am holding as well done or good, then I can assess something in a different lens or through a different lens.
That's brilliant. That's so good. And I think one of the things that you're really spearheading in the church is developing more and more people in more and more roles. And I love that. I love the fact that we've got people at all different levels, all different ages, all different skill sets doing a lot of different things. And that's great. Getting people up, for the first time, just to read something, it's just great. There's a lot of inclusivity in the church, and I think that's lovely. And getting the kids involved as well, that's great. Yeah. So we have a great children's ministry. I mean, actually, we have good ministry all the way through, don't we? So I mean, it's really good, and you've got good leaders who can be relied on to do stuff. But
absolutely,
it's it is just going, okay, you do, and kind of meeting with them and overseeing the ship rather than, it's like the captain of a ship doesn't go down and see whether the chef's doing his job all right.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is the church is an organism. It's a living, breathing body of people, and therefore it's never static. And so a few things I've held through a whole of this process is that Jesus is the head of the church, and therefore I'm not in control. He's the one building his church. The gates of hell will not prevail against it. And it's not for me to hold control over a body of people. I ultimately am there really as a shepherd to allow the empowerment of this body in many, many ways. And that does look like people stepping into the gifts that they have, both within the context of the church and as the church scattered as well. And I think the more I learn that, the more joy I find in that. But there's incredible, again, that phrase, that rich tapestry. Everybody's at a different starting point. So, and that's the beauty of the organism of the local church. There'll be some things flourishing and absolutely, flying on all cylinders. And there'll be some things at the kind of ground zero. They're starting again. They're at the beginning of the life cycle, and some things are coming to the end of the life cycle. And I think part of a pastoral leadership role is to assess and understand where in the life cycle of something is that particular ministry, and then help that ministry move through that life cycle. And that is, I think that's an honor and a privilege, really. And I think COVID did some damage to some of that, because it put a full stop on some things that weren't ready to put a full stop on. It started some things that no one was ready to start. It paused a whole load of things that weren't they were flourishing, and then there's this kind of pause that happened, and then you've got to start again from somewhere else in its life cycle. So all of that, I think the church with a big C really is learning again, and there was certainly in Western church practice really a huge drive pre-COVID to serve, and we were known as places where you were valued for what you did and what you bring, etc. And that wasn't the full story, but it was a big part of the story. So one of the things we now, I think, in Western church, we now experience is a reluctance back to that culture. And that looks like slightly more complex for volunteers joining teams and all those sort of things. So I think we have to assess the busyness of church through a number of lenses now. But one of the lenses I would definitely put it through is through the health of the people. Actually, do our programs result in healthy people and healthy followers of Christ? Because if they don't, I'm not sure that they're serving the right priority necessarily. Yeah,
we don't want programs just for the sake of having programs. And and I think that the picture of church has changed in that we're certainly, for us, we're aiming to be much more relational. And I mean, I remember when I came to the church, it was quite cliquey without meaning to be, but it just was. You know, all the young families went to the 9:30 service, and all the other people went to the 11:30 service, and never the twain shall meet, you know. And it was and you go into church and people go, oh, hi, but there was no relationship there, and it was quite difficult. And I know, talking to people, that certainly wasn't what they wanted. But I think since COVID particularly, and on purpose, I think you've led us into that. Let's be more relational. Let's be much friendlier, and having the lunches and encouraging people. And I think that's a healthier church.
Yeah, I agree. I think the program-driven church are seemingly of yesteryear now. I mean, programs are still important, and activities are still important. We still have to host those things. But I think, once again, a return to a New Testament image of a church as a body, a church as a family. Those kind of images for us have really resonated again. This understanding that when one of us is absent, we're lacking. And every one of us plays our parts. Paul and Joy, some of our location pastors in the north, use an image of, you know, we're a family, not a restaurant. This sense that actually when we come together for the meal, whatever the meal looks like, we all do something. We all bring ourselves to that, rather than we come to be served by others, etc. And this, I think that's it's certainly a warmer culture that we're trying to create behind the scenes. And I think the piece that you've talked about, Jan, about multi-age, I think, you know, about our eldest congregation members of 96, 97 now, through to this Sunday dedicating 5 babies. And that genuinely is the image of our church. They're not the extremes. This is who God is bringing to us at the moment. So multi-age, but also multinational or multi-ethnic, I think reveals to the world an image of family that isn't solely the nuclear family. It's something that is a biblical picture. And that thrills me. It thrills me to be part of a church that isn't solely about one demographic in one place. And I'm not knocking that, but for us, it's the fuller picture, as you described, you know, about men's and women's conferences, etc. It's that kind of God came for both Jew and Gentile. It's this sense that actually we are joined together in Christ, every nation together under him as one new nation, one kingdom that has come. So yeah, there's something brilliant in that, and anything we can do to just be a part of facilitating that, I think is a joy.
I love it. I love, you know, I've been to Africa a few times, so, you know, I've got Nigerian names, so, you know, and I love it. I love that the culture is coming into our worship, just not taking over. And, you know, I think that's something that requires managing. And that's your job, really, is to kind of manage this whole mix so that it doesn't become totally
absolutely,
you know, because we still do have some, especially older people that are, you know, they don't even know what to call somebody that's a different color, you know. And so you've still got those people to minister to, plus you've got the young people, and we have students. And I love the fact we have such an amazing student body in our church too. And they're all from all over the world, you know.
It's amazing.
Brilliant. So
I think the prophetic image that was given to one of our pastors, Pastor Lannery, 10, 15 years ago now, is an image that we've picked up again more recently. And he had a dream that he saw two hands. In one hand was charcoal, in the other hand was yam, and representing black and white. And the image in the dream was that these two substances were placed into a pestle and mortar. And as the hand then grinded the charcoal and yam together, what came out, the overflow of that out from the bowl, was gold. So it didn't result in grey, it resulted in gold. And I think we've held quite strongly now to this image of what does gold look like. And it doesn't look like just being one nation. It doesn't look like just being British, white British, or being African. It actually looks like multi. And this wonderful sense of what it is to be together, be joined together. So yeah, we're working towards that. And I think you're right, that we're starting to see some of the fruit of that. I believe that God's got something even greater than what we're seeing at the moment. And we're just kind of following the Spirit really on this one, because I don't think we've got any of the kind of skills to make it happen. So we're following what God's doing. And sometimes I just love the fact that when God takes the lead on these things, the joy is the partnership with him, but also the invitation to keep up with him sometimes. And I think in our context, it feels like there's an invitation into something that, whilst we've got a little image of it, we haven't seen the fullness of it yet. And therefore it's an adventure to see what's revealed next.
Yeah, that's exciting. I mean, that really, I guess, is the question, is where do you see yourself, you know, a year from now, 2 years from now, you and Claire, the boys, and where do you see the church? What is there anything, you know, that's burning in your heart that you want to see happen?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think for me, this year will become a defining year of my life. I think moving from these months, moving forward, have to shape my future. And therefore, at the core of who I am, some of the things I want to lead towards would look like health. And I don't just mean physical health, I mean a holistic health before God. So getting pacing right and allowing a body to really understand some of the biblical principles of what it is to live well, live whole lives before God, etc. So I think that will shape my own personal ministry because of the testimony of my life. And therefore, to lead us from where we're at now to where God is moving us to, I think we'll incorporate much of that story in it. And I think for me, the essence of what God is doing in the centre of Lincoln is that he's forming a community made in his image for the transformation of our city, ultimately. And at the moment, I think there's a lot about the formation of our community that's taking place, in order that in the future there will be a missional, transformational piece. And I know that within the church there's many that are kind of bubbling below the surface of let's get on with that missional piece. But I do feel that the formation of this multi-ethnic, multi-aged, male and female family that will bring transformation just because of who it is, in the heart of the city, working in unity with other churches, is part of what God's doing at the moment. So I'm really quite excited about the next few years, because I think what we're seeing at the moment is God's breath on the bones, that kind of prophetic image of the Old Testament, of the skeleton growing, flesh and sinews being put on the bones. And I always get drawn to the body image for church. And I think there's just something about the breath of God being birthed into, being poured into the body. I believe that's what's happening in Lincoln Central at this moment. And then across the whole of Alive Church as a multi-site church. I think the mandate is apostolic. So the mandate for us is planting. The mandate is for us to move into the region, to support the local church that's already active, not to take over, but to play our part. And I think the harvest is ripe. And I believe that our next phase looks like training and equipping leaders, training and equipping planting teams for a missional, apostolic movement into our region and wherever God takes us.
Amen. Well, we've run out of time, Howard. That's been brilliant. I really appreciate you. And I'm excited about where the church is going. I'm so blessed to be part of Lincoln Central, Alive Lincoln Central, and to have you and Claire as our pastors. So we'll just play out the last few seconds, that's all we've got left, with Dave. God's got this, because that's the truth, isn't it? God's got this. Thanks, Howard. God bless everyone.
Bless.
See you.
Step, I can't see the summit yet. This mountain seems too high to climb. I've already faced my mountain, I've come down the other side. Lord, this one surely can